Hey guys, I'm your boy Retro Bliss, and this is the new Atari Paddle Controller by BD Retro Mods. Now this works on the Atari 2600, the 7800, and the 8-bit systems. Now I tested this exhaustively with the known Atari 2600 paddle games. I did test this with the Atari 8-bit games. There are some of them, and with the 7800 games, but I'm going to only show you some of the 2600 games with this. And so I'm going to let you know my opinion on this. So without further delay, let's get to it. Ryan from BD Retro Mods brought a prototype of this paddle to the Pittsburgh Gaming Expo. And after playing Breakout with it for a while, I just knew that I was going to get one once that Brian started to produce his final design. So this is the final design. As you can see, it's a single paddle. As a result, you may need an adapter for a second paddle for a second player. You also don't necessarily have to use one of his paddles as a second paddle. In my case, I used my Hyperkin Ranger paddle controller for the purpose of testing for the video. As far as I could research, there are 29 paddle games that were officially released for the Atari 2600. I'm not going to show all of the games to you that were tested, and I'm not going to show you the games like backgammon, blackjack, and casino. But the action games requiring some dexterity with the paddle itself were my concern. So let's get started with Breakout. This controller is not a handheld controller. It's meant to be a tabletop controller, where you can have independent control of the paddle apart from the fire button. It can come with either the paddle on the left or right side, depending on your preference, and with a variety of colors for the fire button. I must admit that I didn't play paddle games much back in the day, and we didn't have that many paddle games. I think the only ones that I can remember having were Street Racer, Night Driver, and Kaboom. I have paddles now, and I refurb them, and they work as they should, but with all of the paddle games that I have now, I wanted to give this controller a test and review to see if it can make any difference in my gameplay. For me, it makes a huge difference. My gameplay in most games has improved across the board so far in the games I've played so far. I've never been good at Circus Atari. I've never gotten past the first stage of Rose, so I'm pretty excited that this is working so well for me so far. I still need to practice, obviously, but it's my experience and not my controller that's the issue. Even though I had Kaboom as a kid, I was never good at it. I do feel that I'm playing it better now than I did back then with this controller, based on the preciseness of the paddle. Warlords is definitely a joy to play with this too. I think it's nice to fire with one hand and to use the paddle with the other. I can also remember not playing Night Driver much as a kid, because I kept crashing into the walls and to the other cars all the time. I definitely seem to be doing better here. This is a game called Egomania, which is much like Kaboom. And this is Encounter at L5, which I haven't played much, but it seems to play well here. And I didn't realize that Canyon Bomber was such a fast-paced game. You really do need a good paddle to play this game right. And I've never really played Demons to Diamonds, but the control seems very good here. And this is Bugs. I wasn't really aware that this was even a paddle game, so I didn't too great to be honest. But that wasn't the controller's fault. And this is Picnic by US Games. Kind of a fun game with the paddle controller. Fast paced for sure. And of course, Video Olympics, or Pong for the lay people. Very good control here. and this is Street Racer, the old standby. The control is great. So in my testing of this paddle, I discovered there are 5 games that will not work unless you have the adapter. The paddle must be plugged into the second port of the adapter in order for these games to work. Those games are Video Olympics, Canyon Bomber, Demons to Diamonds, Street Racer, and Astro Blast. It's also important to note that if you're going to play paddle games on an Atari 8-bit computer, you will need the adapter for that as well. So what are my final thoughts and recommendations for this paddle controller? Well, I think if you're a casual paddle gamer and you only have a few games and you have paddle controllers that do work, I don't necessarily think that this paddle controller is for you. However, if you have a number of paddle games and you like to play paddle games and you're serious about it, I would definitely consider getting this controller. I think the control is better on a tabletop than it is being held in your hand and pushing the button with your hand. For me, pressing the fire button while I'm turning the paddle can sometimes mess my control and accuracy, so I think this is a better option for me. So thanks for watching. While you're here, do us a favor and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. It's free for you, but it helps us out a bunch. So with that, have an awesome day, and we'll see you on the next one.